So, all right, everyone, welcome back to this next episode of the Run the System podcast. As always, my name is Chris. I am your host, and today I actually have a guest on the podcast. I'm joined by Austin Meyers, an endurance athlete. Is that the accurate way you would describe yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would. I've dabbled in the endurance space, and now it's just a small part of a big life, but definitely something that I love doing, and I've grown a lot from.
Awesome, awesome. So you've done marathons, you've done short stuff, short distance, long distance. Have you done any ultras or 70Ks, 70 miles yet?
Yeah, I've done two 100s, and then I've done numerous like 50s and things like that. Done the marathon distance the most, but definitely love kind of stepping it up to the ultra distance. It's a different challenge. It becomes very mental in that framework, and so that's something that I enjoy doing as well.
Awesome. What got you into kind of distance running to begin with?
It's a good question. I mean, I played sports growing up my entire life, mainly ice hockey. And so, I find myself in college, no longer playing organized team sports and looking for something to do. So I'm going to the gym, just kind of doing normal college kid things, and wake up one morning. It's a rainy April morning, and I'm in my dorm room, freshman year of college, and I hear like cheering going on outside the window. And I look outside, and there's a road, down through campus, and they were running the Louisville, Kentucky Marathon. They run it like 2 weeks before the Kentucky Derby. So they call it the Kentucky Derby Festival Marathon and then mini marathon as well. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. People out here on a Saturday morning pushing themselves. Not by no means was it a beautiful day. It rarely is on that race day, actually. April in Kentucky is pretty rainy and sometimes a little muggy. But, I saw people out there pushing themselves, and it looked like something that I would A, enjoy doing, and B, benefit from doing as well. And so that next year, I trained for and ran my first half marathon. Stuck with half marathons there for a few years, and then stepped it up in like 2022, 2021. Maybe it was my first marathon. And so from there, it becomes a little bit addictive. I mean, it's easy to kind of find ways to stair step your way up. You run the distance, and whether it's a great day or a challenging day, you find yourself wondering if you can do it better the next time, or wondering if you can do more. Um, and in that process, you also see how you're growing outside of the sport itself. And that's really what's kept me around. Now that I've been doing it for, you know, 5 years really, um, focused towards marathon and longer distances, I've gone through phases where it's like sometimes you need to take a step back. You need to allow it to just be a phase of your life. And then other times you can kind of invest more heavily in a specific goal. And both are great, and there's a season for both approaches. And for me, a lot of what the last year has been is just finding a way to make it a part of my lifestyle as opposed to being like an all-out pursuit. And I've been really happy with, how that's worked out with everything going on in life. And now I'm kind of building up for a race this spring, which is going really well. So I'm excited about that, and just happy to have seen this like arc of personal growth in conjunction with the physical stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. So with all this and kind of transitioning from college and ice hockey, which I also played ice hockey and like town hockey. It's like the only
Yeah,
sport I really miss that I actually played, that
yeah,
and crew. Um, so with all of this, there's had to have been a lot of like, as you said, there's growth, but there also had to be some system changes that you've had to kind of build, wing it yourself, implement change. And so part of run the system is developing productive systems to create that consistency to help with continued growth when it's 2 degrees out and the last thing you want to do is go run 15 miles on a Saturday morning. You want to stay in
Mhm.
bed. So can you talk a little bit about some of the systems and habits that you've developed in that transition period from college life to real world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a hard thing to self-analyze, at least in the moment it is. Because really it almost becomes a matter of like survival where you set these goals and you really just say, well, I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. And in those situations, you don't think as much about the systems as just like doing the next right thing is a way that I sometimes put it. Like the thing that I have to do next to then incrementally move me towards my goal. I mean, you could probably argue that goal setting in and of itself is a system to organize your priorities on what you want to do. And that probably was first and foremost being very clear on what I'm going to do and to some degree why I'm going to do it. And knowing that like what I'm going to do and the work that I'm going to put in my estimation, is worth it. And that's not always come easily, specifically the last few years with running. Like I've questioned, is it worth it to continue doing it? That's why I say like sometimes you need to take a step back and just do it because you enjoy it. Maybe see if you still do enjoy it. And when you realize you do, then you kind of remind yourself like when the time's right, if I want to pursue this goal, if I want to commit to something for like 4 months, 16-week training block. If I'm willing to commit to that, I believe it'll be worth it. I believe it'll be something that I'll benefit from ultimately in the long run. And so once I kind of parse through those thoughts with myself, it's obviously a matter of doing the work, organizing things on a week to week basis, is really where I'm at right now in this training block. Knowing that like every week, if I want to run a faster marathon. It's currently my goal. I have to be willing to do like 2 speed workouts a week. I have to be willing to get in X amount of weekly mileage. In an ideal world, that weekly mileage is building more often than not in terms of like progressive overload. And then I have to be, like you said, get out there on the days where you don't want to do it. And it's winter, and hopefully we're on the tail end of winter right now, but
Fingers
um,
crossed.
it's been it's been winter,
Yeah.
and it's been snowy, it's been cold, and that can be, a big time barrier for people in pursuit of their goals. And for me, I think the thing that I always come back to is measuring like how much time I'm actually going to devote to it in the grand scheme of my day, in the grand scheme of my week. Because even on my longer days, let's say it's like a 3 hour commitment, that's still a fraction of my entire day. And before I know it, if I'm willing to like take those initial steps to get out the door, first of all, that's the hardest part. But second of all, like before I know it, I'll be back on my couch, like relaxing, and I'll have that satisfaction knowing that I did number one, what I said I was going to do, but also number two, what I needed to do to hopefully achieve my goal. There's still no guarantee that I will achieve my goal, but I've at least kind of, pushed the chips in on myself. Um, and so that's kind of how I view like the weekly plan, knowing ultimately what my weeks have to look like, and the fact that I have to string together 14 to 16 of those weeks to give myself an opportunity to run a really good race. And knowing it's worth it's a big part of it, because if you find yourself questioning, is it worth it? Why am I doing this? And you will. Like, it's not to say you're always going to be 100% sure of yourself, but you have to be able to come back to some assuredness to say that what I'm doing is worth it. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to look back on this effort, even if I don't achieve my goal. I'm not going to look back and say, well, that wasn't worth it, because I'm going to know the work that I put in, I grew. Like I was able to look at other aspects of my life and say, that's the work ethic I need to apply to those areas of my life to move the needle forward. When I break that down into like the daily aspects of the system, it's finding what works best for you, first and foremost. What works best for me might not work best for someone else. I coach anywhere from like 10 to 15 athletes, and I can see in the way that people break down their daily training and when they're finishing their training for the day. Some people run in the morning, some people run in the afternoon, some people run in the evenings, and it works for each individual person. For me, I know that there is the least resistance to do it in the morning. Now, granted, I don't like waking up in the morning. I hate waking up in the morning, actually. I am not a morning person. I've owned that about myself, but I know like I have to go to work and I'm not going to want to do it after work.
Hmm.
And so there's a greater barrier of entry for me in the afternoons and in the evening time. And so I'm intentional about when I set my alarm. Try not to do it earlier than I need to, but I set my alarm at the time that I know I need to get up and I need to begin getting the ball rolling on my day. I'm not necessarily the type of person that can like be up and out in 15 minutes. I give myself, like an hour in the morning to have coffee, and to kind of wake up and get my mind right. And that's part of it too. Like you have to be able to find little things that you enjoy around your habits that make them more approachable. Because if I just woke up and got out there and, ran my heart rate up immediately in the freezing cold weather, like I would hate it. And it would be something that like I would almost come to fear in some way. And that association that I built up around it, like I would just talk myself out of it more often than not. But if I can have that win of like, well, wake up when you need to wake up and just, have coffee and get things moving in the right direction and then get out the door. And then once you get out the door, get the work done and move on with your day. Like don't spend too much time thinking about it. You have other things to do, but it's a win that you know, I can get early on. And it truly is just a day by day approach. It's finding that system, like the smallest barrier of entry for you, and knowing that like what I'm gonna do today is going to be a brick towards the goal that I have for myself. And it's very rarely ever something that looks great on paper. I mean, it truly is just like put in the time. Some days are gonna feel good, some days are gonna feel awful, but they all work the same. They all move the needle forward the way you need them to. Um, so that's just kind of, how I view my systematic approach. It's nothing fancy. It's just knowing like what I'm going to do is what has to be done.
Yeah, but there's something to be said about essentially keeping it simple
Yeah.
and not overcomplicating it. So what is when you're writing out your plan, your 16-week training block, how does how do you build like an incremental versus or like build up the mileage, then decide when to taper and
Right.
all of that stuff? How do you design that as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's first and foremost you have to know what is manageable for your body and for your lifestyle. Um, and so I'll be realistic about like the season that I'm in with my life and saying there are some seasons where it's not appropriate for me to invest the amount of time that I'm investing currently into my training. And so in those moments, like that's a great opportunity to just make it a part of your life and not make it the focal point of what you're doing. However, when we're considering like a training block, um, ideally you're giving yourself the ability to make some progress on a week to week basis, whether that be a very, incremental bump in mileage, whether that be a workout that gives me or any other athlete the ability to see progress and to put up like measurable results. So maybe it's like running mile repeat intervals. Like we can take the data that we have on a given workout day and um, we can look at that and say, okay, this is maybe where we're at now. Now let's do, 3 more weeks of work where we're focused on real speed development and like aerobic capacity development. And then we're going to come back and we're going to measure with a similar workout or maybe a slightly different workout or maybe a harder workout. And hopefully, I know for me it helps, and I believe it does for my athletes. Like, hopefully, you're gonna see some improvements that have been made in a month worth of time. Because that's the thing. Like, if you're not feeling like what you're doing is working, you're not gonna keep doing it. And so, I think a lot of times, especially when I look back on my early days in endurance sport, it was mainly about mileage. Like, if I could go out and run a long run that was longer than last week's long run, then I knew I was making progress, or at least I felt like I was. And obviously, there's a time and a place too to, like you mentioned, tapering. Um, for me, like I'm kind of at a point in a training block right now where I could probably benefit from a deload. Like we're halfway through a 16-week block. My body's feeling it. We've made progress. Um, and sometimes you got to take a step back to take two steps forward. And so it's being able to know that as the athlete, and then if you're working with a coach, being able to communicate that to the coach, or in my case as the coach, it's being able to ask the right questions of the athlete to say like, how are we feeling mentally and physically? Because the mental burnout is as real as the physical burnout, and it will also lead to physical burnout. Even if the body otherwise could manage more and more work, it's like life stress still happens. And so it's being able to balance like that growth equation, stress plus rest equals growth. Like we're constantly managing that in the context of a busy life where we've got competing priorities. And along the way, I hope that we all can have fun with it. It's not always easy for me. Like I'm always going to say, let's have fun with it. But I'm also uh, hypercritical of myself sometimes to where it's like I can put up a really good workout, but if I don't like the way it felt, then I might have negative thoughts about it
Hmm.
or about where I'm at in that training block.
Hmm.
And so, like, all of these things can detract from the main reason we're here, which is really to increase our livelihood and hopefully have fun and like make memories. And so I try to lighten up those heavier times of a training block. And this is me all like I'm talking about this stuff, but it's just me outside at 6 a.m. in the pitch black and 15-degree weather. Like,
Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, repeat until the Garmin says 15 miles.
exactly. And it's like, but this is the amount that goes into the mental game of it
Yeah.
all, right? Like, because it's much easier to be like, well, it's not worth it and not do it, or I'm tired and not do it. And if you're going to compete against that natural urge, you have to be able to master the internal dialogue. And that's a point of continued growth for me as an athlete, knowing that I do want to do this. I want to enjoy it. I want to get better. And so it's like I'm going to have these conversations with myself and I'm going to assess these conversations with myself. Because when the dialogue turns negative, it's not sustainable. And so you have to be able to master that inner dialogue.
So what do you do when that dialogue creeps in, or if the discipline slips and that mental battle is worse than the physical battle? Because for me, I know a lot of it, especially in these months, I can go out and I can do 15 mile long run if I need to, but it's that mental battle. It's even harder than the physical battle. So when that kind of slips and you're kind of falling off the training block of the system a little bit, how do you realign yourself?
I'll come back to this saying of like do the next right thing. And so for me, like I'll use tomorrow as an example. I've got to work. Okay, it's been a busy start to the week, right? You and I were talking about this before we started recording. And I've got to work out tomorrow. Wednesdays are tough, man. I've got a lot of times I'll do my workouts on Wednesdays. And Wednesdays are the days where like typically I'll feel the week. Like it starts to kind of weigh on me a little bit. So what I tell myself is wake up, get up when your alarm goes off Wednesday morning, do the workout to the best of your ability. Try to be present. Don't think about later. Be present. Give it everything you've got. You're going to be proud of yourself when it's over in 90 minutes or whatever it may be. And then and this is where I've gotten better over time. I say, you know what? When I get home Wednesday from work, I'm shutting it down. Like I'm chilling. I'm de-stressing. I'm doing whatever my heart and soul needs me to do to be able to like recharge for a few hours before Thursday morning comes. And in the past, I didn't let myself do that. I was like, go, go, go everywhere. And I was just like a constant ball of stress where it's like trying to manage and perfect everything. And it's just not reasonable. And it makes it harder to show up when it is time to do the work. So it's pushing through the lower moments of a given week, maybe a given day, and just saying, like, all right, if if you show up and you do it the way that you know you can do it, there is a reprieve coming, and it's going to give you the ability to recharge and show up again the next day. And that's, like I said, it's an area that I've grown. It's a self-awareness that I've had to build, and I think it's necessary for everyone. Like, we're not professional athletes. This isn't our job. We can't commit hours on into it. We do have the necessary responsibilities after or before our training is done. And so we have to find time, as professional athletes do, to wind down and recover. Recovery, it's important. It's necessary. And if you disregard it, then it's going to catch up to you.
What's your favorite way to recover? Is it just slamming a pizza and soda?
Um, Dude, I could sleep for like 11 hours a night.
I'm right
And
there with
so
you.
like I would say sleeping is my favorite way to recover. And that's why the weekdays are so hard for me. Like I feel so good on the weekends.
Mhm.
So especially when I do my long run on Sundays, because I'll sleep a ton Saturday morning, and then I'll get a good amount of sleep Sunday morning too, and then I'll go run and I feel incredible. But when I'm not sleeping a lot, which is typically midweek, I feel it. So sleep is the number one for me as far as recovery. But yeah, I mean, a really good meal goes a long way, and just like connect with somebody. For me, it's like connecting with my fiance and maybe my family, like going out to dinner with somebody, watching a TV show, like something to just shut your mind off. Because I like to live in this ideal world where I'm like, yeah, when you get home Wednesday night, like you're gonna relax. It's not always that easy. Like sometimes stress is still really high and it's hard to come down from that. And so I try to find things that like allow me, like that almost don't allow me to focus on other things, which running does in a way too, where it's like you have to be single track minded on that task in the moment. I try to do the same thing when I'm trying to relax because otherwise the mind's just going to kind of keep running.
It keeps running when you have stopped running.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of aspects, be it as an athlete or as a not professional athlete, as you just pointed out, because we're not, we still got bills to pay. What areas are you trying to specifically build in your character, either through running or just existing in this mad, mad world?
Yeah, it's showing up and doing what I say I'm gonna do. That's the first thing. Because that's really the primary choice we're faced with. Like, are you going to own the contract that you signed when you decided to do this race, when you decided to set this goal, when you decide to set your alarm tomorrow morning? Are you going to own up to that when the time comes? So that's really the main thing for me. It's a constant discipline. It's rarely easy. And as much as you practice it, like you're still going to have that voice in your head that says, well, you don't have to do it. And so for me, it's continuing to master that aspect of it. And outside of that, I don't know. I mean, it's just trying to find little ways to be better. I spent a lot of last year just trying to feel healthier because I'd kind of been dealing with like lingering aches and pains that felt like injuries, and so part of my focus was just like feel more athletic, feel more able to handle the stress of training, of marathon training specifically, if that's what you want to do. And ultimately, it's what I decided I wanted to do to start this year. And thankfully, because of the time invested in that small goal, it has paid off to this point in this training block. I feel healthier. I feel like I can handle the rigors of the training cycle. And also mentally, I feel focused on why I'm doing it and what I'm doing. Um, so, those are really the two main things. Just continuing to be really, really hyper intentional on what I want to do, why I'm doing it, um, and trusting yourself. Like, trust yourself. And it's the most important relationship you have is with yourself. And trust is central to any relationship that you have. And I can probably say, like, I struggled to trust myself in the past, and endurance sport has allowed me to trust myself more. It's strengthened the relationship that I have with myself, and it's still a work in progress, but it's something that I feel like there's a direct benefit from endurance sport that I'm gaining.
Awesome. And so to kind of pivot gears in the worst topic pivot ever, um, every athlete has their kind of tool chest of physical tools that they use, be it um, certain gear that they wear, their shoes, their Garmin, their nutrition. Can you kind of talk about what you've trial and errored and what kind of gear you specifically use for your runs, from your shoes to your Garmin to race day rituals and nutrition?
Yeah. I love my Garmin. I've always loved my Garmin. I've had this one. It's the Phoenix 7 Solar. I've had this one for 3 years. A little, yeah, 3 years. A little bit before I ran my first 100 miler. Listen, I'm not like crazy detailed about data and feedback and stuff on training. But I do enjoy it. I like everyone else. I enjoy being
So you
able
can
to
see
hit
that
save.
upward trend of
Yeah. I enjoy being able to hit save. I enjoy being able to see this chart on Strava, like all that stuff. It's just a little way that I can reward the hard work, right? Which keeps me showing up again and again and again. So I love my Garmin for that reason. Um, phew, I wearing a lot of cold weather gear. I'll tell you that this winter. Um, Bandit tights have been really great. Full tights and half tights for me. I've been wearing a lot over the last year of training. Shoes wise, I'll tell you what, I've fallen in love with Asics. Asics and New Balance are my primary brands of running
that's the
shoe.
correct answer, by the way. I'm A6 through and through. I'm currently wearing the Cumulus, and I
Yeah,
got the Blast family
yeah,
for training,
great.
and then the Metaspeeds for race day.
They've been yeah, they're all great. I mean, and that's the thing, like Um, that's changed over time. I really started to kind of get into Asics over the last like 6 to 8 months. But you can kind of see like what brands are really investing in the quality of the shoes that they're making.
Mhm.
And you put them on your feet, and if you like the way they feel, like keep wearing them and try different styles that they offer. And if you don't, like move on. That's okay too. But Asics has worked really well for me. Um, I keep a pretty heavy shoe rotation. Like I said, it's still mainly between like Asics and New Balance, but I'll wear I won't wear a pair of shoes more than twice a week. And that's kind of like a habit that I have had ingrained. I used to work at a running shoe store on two separate occasions. I worked at a Fleet Feet and then a Runner's Roost, which is a local store in Colorado. We lived out in Colorado for a short amount of time. And so like I was always used to getting discounts on running shoes and sometimes like um, shoe brands and
You'd
representatives
get the
from the
seed shoes
brand.
from the brand reps that come in. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm used to having a heavy rotation, and so I still kind of like I'll put some miles on the shoes. I'm not like putting 200 miles on them and moving on. So I keep a heavy rotation. And in some way like that allows me to kind of get excited for the run. If I like the way a pair of shoes feel, I'll get excited about like getting to run in those shoes. Um, so yeah, I mean shoes, Garmin, the compatibility with things like Strava, Garmin Connect. The training platform that I use as a coach, and I'm also coached through. It's called V.O2. Have you ever heard of that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of got turned on to that one about a year ago, first from the athlete side, and then I started to coach through it as well. It took a little bit of time to grow on me, but I do like it. The main feature that I find beneficial for the athlete is that me as the coach, I program the workout in a template in such a way that like the athlete, all they have to do when they click run on their watch, if they have a Coros or a Garmin watch, is they just like say, do workout, and then they do the workout step for step the way that I programmed it. So if you have like a background with Garmin, you can manually create workouts in your Garmin. That's the way that I did it for the longest time, which is fine. But with VDOT, I can basically create the workout so that it limits the amount of time and thought and energy that an athlete has to put into it. And so that they know like they are getting the workout the exact way that I wrote it, as opposed to being like, oh, I missed a step. Sorry, I didn't see that part in the description. And so it's been cool. It's been a cool training platform. Definitely not a necessity for anybody, but if you ever get exposure to that platform, I think it's really useful for both coaches and athletes.
Nice. Nice. What about nutrition? And how does the nutrition change between a marathon training block, a half block, and something like a 50 or 100-mile block?
Well, the biggest thing that I'll point out early is like nutrition changes intra run between a marathon and then anything more than a marathon, maybe anything more than like a 50K, but it's really about how much time you're out there in terms of an ultra. But for me, like I will integrate whole food into an ultra training block as well as an ultra race day, as opposed to a marathon or less, where it'll just be gels and then maybe like carbohydrate powder. Um, and that so like right now with the marathon block, I'm taking I've recently started cis gels, SIS. It's
Oh
like
yeah, I've seen them here and there.
they've been really good for me. I've actually loved them. So they're 40 grams of carbs per gel. Price point isn't that bad compared to something like a Morton. But the
And like
thing
what,
about,
$3, $4 a gel?
yeah, like Morton's a lot. I mean, it
One's
could be like
ridiculous.
4 to 5, but um, the cyst gels have been good on my stomach. I like that you get 40 grams of carbs per gel because I'm not the best about discipline. So if I have to take like 2 to 3 gels an hour to hit my carbohydrate goals per hour, it sometimes doesn't happen. And so that gel for me has been great to try to get in like that. I try to get around 70 grams of carbs per hour is kind of where I'm at right now. And
Hmm.
that's something that can build for an athlete. Like if you hear 70 grams of carbs per hour and you say, that's a lot, I could never do that. Well, let's look at where you're at now and let's try to build that by like 10 grams of carbs per hour. Something that I think is lost on a lot of endurance athletes is that you can train your gut, your stomach, your digestive system the same way that you train your body physically, your aerobic system. And so, just really be intentional about like adding in carbs into your runs over a training block and see if you can get it to like if you're at 40 grams of carbs per hour right now consistently workouts or long runs, see if you can get it up to 50, 55. Because for me, I've always kind of been around like 55 and then into like low 60s. Now I'm like, well, let's see if I can get the benefit of like 70 to 75, maybe even 80, depending on how I progress throughout the training block. All that to say, like having a gel that packs a little bit bigger of a punch is really beneficial and has been for me. I'll use a powder every once in a while. I like Tailwind. I also do like the Morton drink mix. Both are great. I don't use it all the time, especially right now in the winter.
Hmm.
Not using it a ton. But it obviously is a way to get in additional carbohydrates, or if you just find yourself being someone who can quickly be depleted of electrolytes, you could just go with like an electrolyte powder. I love Element. That's personally my favorite. Um, the Redmond's Real Salts Relight is the name of the brand. Relight is a good one as well. But those are really the two big things. Like if you want to master how you feel in an endurance effort outside of simply just training and becoming more competent at the sport, um, electrolytes, hydration, and carbohydrates, nutrition, it's really the biggest way to do it. And then the X factor for a lot of people can be caffeine during the run. So, a lot of these gels nowadays, they'll have like 100 milligrams of caffeine in the gel.
Mhm.
And for some people, that's like rocket fuel. And they really notice a difference. For me,
For me, that's
um,
8 a.m.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I notice a difference a lot of the time for sure. But and I do use the caffeinated gels. I don't feel like I need them as much as I simply just need carbohydrates because I get caffeine in before my workouts. And so like typically I'm still, running off of that literally. And so for me it's like I notice the energy boost and kind of like I notice my legs lighten up during a long run when I've gotten in like 40 grams of carbs. Like the next like few miles I'll notice like things become a little bit easier.
Cool. Um, where has there been an area of like friction within your training in recent blocks that you've been able to deal with and overcome? Can you go a little bit into what that was like when you kind of hit an unanticipated bit of friction?
Yeah, it's come up in two ways and they've kind of combined together to make things really hard and I've worked through it. But the first one is just like I was burnt out going from race to race. I would finish a race and then I'd be like, all right, when's my next race? And I'd sign up and I'd expect to be able to take like 2 to 3 weeks away from a training block and be able to go right back into it with the same type of motivation. And it wasn't sustainable. It was sustainable for like 2 years, which is actually a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah.
But it's like you can't do that for a decade. It's just not realistic. Especially as your life
I was gonna say,
develops
as
around
you
you.
age, 24-year-old Chris is not the
Yeah.
same, or 34-year-old Chris is not the same as 24-year-old Chris. Like that's
And you wouldn't want that. That's the
no.
thing is it's so funny how quickly those priorities shift. And I've said this a few times. I would not have been able to say this a year ago. 2025 was so big for me, and it's not something that I really even care to share to something like Instagram. Like 2025 was so big to me because I got so clear on what matters to me. And I would not have been able to say a year ago that if you took running away from me, I would be okay. But I can say that right now. And me being able to say that today is why I am
That's
feeling so good in this training block because it is not defining who I am. I'm doing it because I want to do it and I love doing it. But if you said you can't do it, like this thing popped up in your life and you can no longer honor this commitment that you made, cool. Like I'm good. I'm going to handle this other thing in my life and I'm going to move forward. I'm still going to run. I'm still going to work out. Like taking care of my health is one thing,
Mhm.
training for a specific goal is another thing. And so free yourself by understanding that it's what you do, it's not who you are. That was a big area of growth for me in 2025. The other thing is more tangible in terms of like I was dealing with some, I guess you could call them injuries, just like reoccurring pain, hip issues, um, and things that I had to address from a strength perspective. Um, because it's just like when you go out and run every day and it hurts physically, it's just not fun. And I wasn't enjoying it for that reason. Started doing some Legree. You know what Legree is?
No, I
It's like
haven't heard of that.
Pilates. You know what Pilates is?
Yeah.
So Legree is kind of like a method of Pilates. So started doing some Pilates like on a reformer. Really helped with my hips and like kind of those smaller muscles that you use when you're running. A lot of it was also just like, and I think this is the case for a lot of people who deal with hip issues. Your quads want to take over your quads are front and center on your body, right? Like when you're running, you can see them. They will take over quite easily if you focus on strengthening your glutes and your hamstrings, the back of your leg, and you get those muscles involved in your running.
Hmm.
It will make you feel healthier. And so that's strength training, being willing to get in the gym and lift some weight and focus on the glutes, the hamstrings. It's also like getting a cheap band on Amazon and doing some like lateral banded walks and some monster walks before you run, getting all those muscles like activated.
You don't
And
just
that's
put on your
really
shoes at 6 a.m. and go out and run 15 miles without stretching up or warming up or anything.
I've done it, man. I have done it, and I still do it sometimes, but we're not going to talk about that. Um, because I know, like, go ahead and do it, but you're just not going to feel as good as if you dedicate like 10 minutes to like activating your muscles.
Yeah,
And it's not hard. Listen to a podcast and activate and then get out the door. Like use that 10 minutes. It's going to make it a much more enjoyable process while you're out there, and it's going to keep you healthy.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So moving towards the end, because I know we're approaching time. Selfishly, I am targeting to do a 50 miler next year, my first
Beautiful.
one.
Yeah.
Um, After I got the idea in my head that I'm doing the Philly Freedom Challenge this year, which is a half 8K and then full on
Hmm.
Sunday.
Yeah.
I figured I'm just 10K away from a 50 miler, so why the hell not?
Hmm.
Um, I've run marathons before, so this year I'll be doing marathon number 4 and 5. What's some advice that you could give me making that jump? And I guess that also kind of parallels to the audience of making that jump from a 5K to a 10K or 10 to half or half to full or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. There's a lot of different directions I could go. Um, the one thing that I would say is like, do not diminish the necessity of truly investing time on your feet. Um, Being out there, pushing through the harder moments, the times where your legs are fatigued, like the times where um, you're just kind of achy and you don't have your A game. Those moments matter so much, especially when you're chasing new distances, because that's how you're going to feel in the final few miles. In the case of a 50 miler, that's how you will feel for like the middle miles. My first 50 miler, I remember how hard miles like 30 to 40 were. Um, because physically you're in a new place, you're doing something you've never done. You have to break through that wall. And yes, you won't do it in training. Like you're not going to go on a 40-mile long run in training to prepare for a 50 miler, but the fatigue that you feel in your legs on those long runs, on those easy runs where you don't expect to feel the amount of fatigue that you feel, like being able to mentally and physically work through those moments, will make you better able to do it on race day when you're, running mile 20 through 26 of the marathon, when you're running mile 45 through 50 of the 50 miler. Um, and so that time piece, it matters. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. The fatigue is one of the greatest, most important components of endurance training. If you are able to train, if you're able to accumulate fatigue, and then you're able to train through fatigue in a manner that you're still healthy. You're not like overtraining to the point of an overuse injury that leads you to be injured, but you are able to build fatigue and then train with it in conjunction with the fatigue. That is where the stimulus comes. And what I've found, especially in my ultra training, is that when I'm able to better recover from day to day, so maybe early on in a training block, I'm doing 16 to 20 mile long runs. And that those next like 3 days, I just feel really rough. Like I'm just tired, I'm achy, I'm not bouncing back well. Well, if I stick to it and I continue to progress, and then I look down the road like 8 weeks, 2 months, I may go out on like a 20, 22 mile run, something that I've noticed to be like kind of a measuring stick of like we're making progress here because it's not always mile splits. And you do get to a point in a training block where it's like you really probably shouldn't run farther because it's going to be too much fatigue hitting your body.
Hmm.
You don't want to make yourself susceptible to injury. But what I find is if you're able to recover in the days following a big effort better, that's a really good way to measure growth, especially in an ultra when you're not chasing really, stringent mile splits. And so make fatigue your friend, because it truly is like it's an X factor for endurance athletes who can cope with it both physically and mentally. You're going to find yourself in the race environment and it's gonna be like, all right, I've been here before. I've felt this. I know what I need to do to work through it. And endurance it's a game of highs and lows. You're just gonna ride the wave. And when you're in a low, you can probably guarantee there's gonna be another high. And when you're in a high, you can probably guarantee there's gonna be another low. And all that's okay. Like that's why we're doing it. I'll come back to what I said earlier, like just be a master of your own inner dialogue.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think a really great really good quote to end on. But thank you, Austin, for joining. This was a phenomenal conversation. I loved how I did not have to talk at all.
I told you I like to talk.
Oh no, it was awesome. I'm sure my listeners will appreciate the reprieve of hearing my voice ramble for 20 minutes. Um, but I definitely love to have you on again. This was fantastic. But yeah, thank you for coming on and chatting with me this evening about running and building systems and everything. And yeah, we will hopefully catch up soon.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much, and best of luck in your pursuits this year. Sounds like you got some big goals.
Yeah, we're working on it.